morning, or should I say good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Clarity in Crisis. I'm Angie Speaks of Eve Speaks, and today in our ongoing series, we'll be discussing financial breakdown through a breakthrough. And as that song says, his favor is upon us, and favor also means a financial breakthrough. Wouldn't you agree? Today, we'll be having with us our special and honored guest, Brian Hurson, whose record will speak for itself. Let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Brian Hurson and why he is overqualified to talk to you about financial breakthrough. Because we all need a little clarity in this crisis, COVID-19, correct? So Brian has over 20 years experience on Wall Street in the financial industry. He is a graduate of Baruch College. He lectures at Columbia University, and he's also a principal at one of the major Wall Street firms rather. He's a principal of one of the major Wall Street firms in the world, actually one of the largest. So again, his track record speaks for itself. So we have Brian by phone today, and Brian Hurson, please, thank you for joining us, and please give us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your journey. Tell the audience all about you.
Well, good afternoon, Angela. Wow, that was quite an introduction. I never really looked back at my life and, put all these accomplishments, I guess, if you will, together and then look at the whole picture. I don't think I've ever really done that or even heard it put so eloquently. Thank you for having me here. It's great to be a part of, your continued effort to deliver, financial know-how and great content. I've been tracking you for some time now, and you're doing a wonderful job. Just to give you a little background on myself, I know right now what's going on. There's a lot of fear, across the United States and across the globe for that matter. We have COVID-19, we have financial breakdown, right? We see the stock market running up. However, there's so many people out of work. It's interesting. There are two numbers that are going up. The stock market, which is just broke a new record just the other day. I think it's the Dow was somewhere around 27,000, north of 27,000. But then you also see the unemployment rate going up. So we have two records, two worlds to speak of. But just to give you a little background on myself, a very long time ago, I made the conscious decision to take control of my finances. I wasn't always financially responsible. At a very young age, I left home. My parents, I came from a South American family. And, my parents, they worked hard. My father was an iron worker. My mother, who was a seamstress from the old country in South America, came to America and somehow became one of the most powerful women in New York City. She worked under the Koch administration and then later under the Dinkins administration. My father, yes, and Dinkins, we all remember Dinkins, who was so instrumental to the MWBE program. So my parents worked hard, and as life would have it, as God blessed them with a lot of resources, enough money to take their move their five kids from South America to the US, and they were able enough to save enough money to send their youngest child to private school. That child was me. My parents sent me to private school from Catholic school, from 4th grade straight through high school. After high school, I made the decision. I said to myself, I do not want my parents paying for my college education, because truth be told, they've done so much for me at that point in my life already. They paid for my high school, they paid for grade school. And again, I made the decision, I'm going to do this on my own.
How thoughtful, very thoughtful of you. Wish more
Yeah,
kids would think like that.
I think I think it was part selfish ambition, along with wanting to cut the ties with my parents, right? I think like most young adults, you just don't want your parents to tell you what to do. So I
I
don't want
suffer
to
from
say,
that too. Don't
I
want to
think
be
we
told
all do.
what to do.
No one wants to be told what to do at an early age. So truth be told, it sounds nice. Yeah, hey, I'm trying to save my parents money, but the truth is, I just wanted to cut the strings. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I did want to save them money. So I went off, lived on my own, at 19, working at odd and ends jobs, like a lot of Americans across the country. I remember my first real job. I would say my first stable job, the job where I realized I had a talent, was actually working at Sears. Sears out in Long Island, Valley Street. I
Uh-huh.
was a salesman working in the audio and visual department. Basically, I was selling TVs and radios.
Right.
It sounds nice, but
So
it's
just
just
like many young people, you had an ambition to have your own income from an early age, which contributed
exactly,
perhaps to your financial, I mean, growth at an early age, would
exactly.
you say? Okay.
Yeah, 100%. And but more importantly, it allowed me to identify the talent that I have. I didn't realize I was a good salesman until I took this role.
Mm-hmm.
I was young. I was about 19. Um, I was working off of a draw. Most people don't know what a draw is nowadays. It's just when you're not getting, you kill, you eat what you kill. Essentially, you're not getting a week to week standard paycheck. If you sell, you get paid a commission, and that's it. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
sell, you borrow from the firm, in this case Sears. They will cover you, but then once you make that sale again, you have to pay the firm back. Anything above the dollar amount that you borrow, you keep. That's what a draw is. And I'm not sure if that practice is still in play in retail, but for me, that's all I knew. But you know what? Although it was painful back then, living off of a draw and living off of commission, because there were weeks that went by, sometimes a sale, when the economy turned upside down, people were not buying televisions, they were not buying radios,
Uh-huh.
and I was basically living on borrowed time. Um, Living off of a draw. And then when sales finally picked up, now I got to pay it all back to my employer because I've been living
So
off of
you
a
learn
draw.
financial responsibility in that sense, in a sense of really you own your own sense of your own destiny. So if you don't
Well,
sell, you don't eat, and if you do sell, you have to pay back whatever you owed in the background. In
correct,
the back.
correct.
Wow. Well, thank you for that little
I
bit of background. I really appreciate that.
yeah, I wouldn't want to say I learned total financial responsibility then, but what I
Uh-huh.
learned was number one, that I have a talent, right? I can sell, you
Right.
know, something I didn't realize up until that point. Number two, what I learned to live with less. Because when you're living on a draw, like you have to cut down on a lot of things,
Okay.
the extravagance and so on and so forth. And the reason why I'm saying that I didn't learn total financial responsibility, I learned one component. Have a
Mm-hmm.
focus on something that you're talented at, and learn how to live on less.
So those are
Later,
like some of the
hmm?
two of the cornerstones in your early years. So we have
Correct.
to focus on setting the right foundation in place. So
That
number one, you identify the talent. Number two, what was the second thing?
Number two is learning how to live with less.
Learning to live with less. Okay.
Correct. Correct. And I think most business owners, that's exactly it, right? When you're running a business, you know what your talent is, whether it's, I don't know, creating a web content, like he speaks,
Mhm.
or reselling a product, hardware, or being a consultant. So you know your talent. And then on top of that, as a business owner, you know, there's the expense side. So you cut it back. You have to learn to dial back your expense because you're always living on the edge as a business owner. There's never really, a true business owner knows there's never really a time of plenty. It's just only a matter of time before things fall apart. So anyway, I'm just going to move it along a little bit. I know, you know, you're strapped on time, but the reason why I just want to make sure you understand at this point in my life, at 19, working at Sears, I didn't have the total financial picture. A few years later, I blew up my credit.
Blew up your credit.
I blew up my credit.
Guilty of that.
We discovered the art of the credit card. Okay, or understand I was living on my own. I had, you know, somewhat of a career in sales and retail sales at Sears. And guess what? I was going to school. Remember I told you that I didn't want my parents to pay for my college? I said, I'm going to do it myself. And I discovered the art of using the credit card, juggling balances between cards, transferring balances, things that I had no clue at that point in my life. And I blew up my credit. I borrowed more than what I was making, that I was capable of paying back. And I ran into financial trouble. However,
well, it sounds like you had your own financial breakdown by
100%
blowing up the credit card.
I think, and I'm fortunate for, you know what, I feel lucky to have had that experience because it taught me a lot. And what you hope for is that it happens early in life, right? If you're going to have a breakdown, you want it to kind of happen early in life, late teens, early 20s, so you can learn your lessons early because you have more time now to, you know, reflect back and then adjust your life going forward. And that's exactly what happens. You know, what gets broken comes back stronger. You think about a bone, right? You break your bone and it heals back. It calcifies, it heals back. In some cases, it's stronger than what it was before. Right. So in order to make things strong, it must be broken.
That's good. But for those of us who we're no longer young and we are in a breakdown right now, please tell us, what does a financial breakdown look like besides the obvious? You can't pay your bills, you can't pay your mortgage or whatever, you can't find food to eat, you can't send your kids to school. What does a financial breakdown look like for those of us who are already, like, we're living in this current pandemic, this current crisis, and we need some help to navigate? From your perspective, with your experience of 20 years, what does a breakdown look like?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. This is going to surprise you. A financial breakdown can happen even if you are paying your bills, even if you're not in debt, even if you can send your kids to school, even if you have food in the refrigerator. How is that, you say, Brian? How can a financial breakdown happen while you are in a time of plenty? A financial breakdown, if you study it at its core, it starts at the lack of visibility. So you think of some of the large companies and the CEOs on top of these large companies that failed, like Enron, perfect example. Enron, I don't know if you remember the story of Enron back in the early 2000s, one of the largest publicly traded companies on the New York Stock Exchange, failed. Hundreds of people out of work.
Yeah, that was pretty staggering.
Yeah, it was pretty staggering. At the core of the issue was a lack of transparency by the CEO and the CFO during the time of plenty, right? So the folks under them were, let's just say, they were not doing things on the up and up. You know, I don't want to get into esoteric type topic of what they were doing.
Let me just interject here. The lack of visibility that an individual has comes from, how do they know they have a lack of visibility? How will they know that?
And that's the $1 million question, right? If you don't know what's coming into your house versus what's going out on a monthly basis, if you do not have a budget, even in the time of plenty, and that's usually when we sort of take our eyes off the road, right? During the time of plenty, money's coming in, everyone's working, you know, kids are in school, everything's going fine, money's, you know, the bank accounts, but then you lose track of what's coming in and what's going out. Even in the time of plenty, that's where the financial breakdown begins. That's where it is. That's what it looks like. A financial breakdown doesn't necessarily mean you are out of money, your expenses outstrip your income. No, it starts from lack of visibility into your finances, the inner workings, the mechanics of your finances. Think about your body. When does the body really start to break down? It's when the brain stops picking up signals from the pain receptors in the rest of your body. If the brain doesn't know you're in pain, or small pain is starting, you're going to break down. At some point, you're going to end up in the emergency room.
Wow, that's a powerful analogy. So
that's why we get checkups.
So how does the individual do these checkups? What checkups do they need to do to get the visibility so that they don't go into the breakdown?
Well, first things first, right? You start at the very basic compound. You know, you hear this all the time, have a budget, have a budget, have a budget. Everyone screams, have a budget, have a budget. But what exactly is a budget? A budget starts out, where do you start with a budget, right? You start out by first doing I would start out with a SWOT analysis. You say, Brian, what's this SWOT analysis? One of these fancy Wall Street terms? No, if you think about what it is, first let me tell you what the words, what the letters mean. SWOT, S like Sam, W, whiskey, O, Oscar, T, Tom, SWOT. The SWOT analysis is used by some of the largest companies on Wall Street, and this is a very common term in grad school. When I did my finance degree, my master's degree, it was a practice for the students to do a SWOT analysis on a Wall Street firm. The S stands for strength, the W stands for weakness, the O stands for opportunities, and the T stands for threats.
Got that, audience? SWOT, S-W-O-T, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. Is that what you said, Brian?
Correct.
So the individual, because we're not companies, the individual, just like he had to do a SWOT analysis, and on the Wall Street firms when he was doing his MBA, he's saying we need to do the same SWOT analysis on your household, on your individual finances. Am I correct?
That is 100% correct.
Okay, so tell us, how do we navigate this SWOT analysis?
It all starts with pen and paper. You sit down, you need to dedicate at least one day, I say more, but look, at minimum, give it one day a month where you assess what you have, okay? What's critical? What is at risk? Your strength. Okay, what are your strengths? You're in a family, I'm just gonna use, I don't know, a micro family, husband, wife, and 2 children, okay? Both spouses are working. That's a strength, right? You have you have a household, you have a 2-income household. Right. That is a strength. You can live off of less, very minimum. You're a minimalist. That's a strength. Being a minimalist is a strength. There aren't too many people. I'm going to tell you, at least not in New York, where I'm from, where I currently reside. There aren't too many people that can live off of less. We like to say we can, but if you really analyze what we go out, what we spend, consume what we consume, a lot of us really can't live off of less. And less is relative, of course, right?
Right.
It's just all relative. And then you think about your weaknesses, the microfamily. Maybe one spouse is physically disabled and they can't work financially, so they can't really go out and contribute to the household. Maybe
the job is seasonal.
Maybe the job is seasonal, right? That's a weakness. How can we firm that up? Maybe the job is that's a perfect example, Angela. What else? What else can you think of a weakness? So you analyze your household. Maybe you have a lot of debt that you inherited. We inherit debt sometimes. Sometimes we even have relatives that we are taking care of. Yes, mom and dad can be classified as a weakness when you think about it. If you have to support another household, especially in my culture.
True. A lot of families, a lot of older children have to take care of their parents, and that puts a strain on the nuclear family.
Yes. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have wealthy parents, in comparison to, the average New Yorker. But I know if I were in that predicament, I love my parents, and my parents needed financial assistance, I would help them because they've done so much for me when I was younger. But guess what? That's classified as a weakness financially because you're now helping another household that doesn't contribute anything like as far as income wise. You're helping an elderly parent.
Okay.
Let's say they have their own mortgage that you might end up in a position where they may come to you. You are their only source to get themselves out of late payments. So it happens. That is a weakness.
Okay.
Opportunities, right? The opportunities. Now, opportunities can come in many forms, right? Opportunities can be access to people. What do you mean by that, Brian? Think about it. If you are in an environment like my church that I go to, wonderful church, there are so many professionals in my church. There are lawyers, there are nurses, there are engineers. You have to look at your environment and say, what are my opportunities? Who can I access to help me build wealth? Who can I access? I have resources to individuals that, the average person, you think about it, in my community do not have access to. We take these people for granted all the time. That's an opportunity. Right. Having the right people in your circle is an opportunity. In my case, Angela, that's an opportunity. I have access to Angela as an example. This is an opportunity. You think about this collaboration we're doing today. So opportunities can take many forms, in the form of people. Sometimes it could be the environment might change that will benefit your talent. We see this happen all the time. We saw what happened in technology. You think about it, right?
Right. I'm certainly enjoying an opportunity, at least for the most part, because of COVID-19. A lot of my business requires a lot of new technology that previously wasn't so urgent because of COVID-19. So even in a downturn, there can be an opportunity.
100%. And you think about the household, right? Because I want to keep it, I know on the enterprise level, right? We're as business owners, we're always looking for the opportunity, but let's think about, you're sitting at the kitchen table, you're doing the 9-to-5 job. What opportunities are there out there? Sometimes the environment changes. The environment totally changes. I'm going to tell you a funny story. So I have a friend of mine who, I'm not going to name the firm, but he works for a very large wealth manager. And, he's African-American. I've known him for many, many, many years, working on Wall Street. And him and I got into a conversation and we were talking. And he said to me, Brian, all what's going on in this country, involving race, and so on and so forth. My company's opened up a dialogue about race, and they're tapping, African Americans, the few African Americans that are there at his firm, to opine. And now, not only that, they're actually looking internally to promote more African Americans. Now, that's an opportunity. Understand? I know it sounds.
How is that an opportunity? How is that an opportunity? So my blackness is an opportunity in COVID. Tell me, how is that an opportunity?
You think about it, right? Right now, employers, the main conversation, a lot of conversations that are taking place now in the boardroom is how can we increase more African American representation in our company. That's the conversation that's happening now.
Right.
I'm a person of opportunity. I know the doors close on these opportunities as time marches on. There's a funny thing that, a funny joke that goes like Americans have very short memories. So we have to take advantage of the moment as quickly as possible because the door closes. Right now, that's a conversation that's happening in the boardroom.
All right. So how is it an opportunity though?
The opportunity is there for you to be able to move up. Now is the time. If you haven't been doing it before, asking for promotions, asking for more money, now it's the time. Strike while the iron is hot. Okay, we're part of this
while
movement.
The iron is hot, guys.
Yeah.
I love it.
If you are, the fight is not just in the street for injustice. The fight's also at your job. It's at your job. All right. You have to be part of the movement to move African Americans to the next level. All right. It's great that we get out, you march, you represent You show the injustice, you bring it to your politicians. That's all great, but understand that you can also play a role at your job by simply asking, okay? Use the time, use the opportunity to ask for a promotion, ask for more money, okay? Not just sit there and let this moment pass you by. So that's an opportunity. And it can be it doesn't have to be if you work in a Wall Street firm or you're working, I don't know, in a grocery store. Now's the time to strike while the iron is hot. Opportunity.
Wow.
Threats. There are many threats. I'm sure we're all familiar with threats. That's the easiest one I think of, the SWOT analysis. Threats can come from many, many directions. A health issue. You take care of your health. It can be pretty expensive when your health goes south. You can end up in a financial crunch. You have to physically take care of yourself, because that's a threat. As we age, the threat increases. All right. If you don't believe that, you can ask any doctor. Okay. Don't take my word for it. Go to your doctor and ask, does the threat of me getting ill increase as I get older? The answer is yes. Like, if all else holding equal, the threat increases, right? You can, there's a threat where your bone becomes, especially for women, for example, their bones can become susceptible to breakage and osteoporosis, and there's a whole host of things. So you have to take care of yourself. Threats can also come from, just your environment changing, right? The environment can change at work. A new boss comes in that's not so friendly, let's just say, right? That's a threat to your well-being, your job, your financial viability. He or she is a threat.
Essentially, the threat is our signals to, the threats can be analyzed as signals to a financial breakdown. Because if they do happen, you will have a breakdown of some kind.
Exactly. Correct? Exactly. Yes. A threat can be on a large scale. Even inflation can be a threat, right? Where are the prices of my the grocery store? It's going up. I know the average person don't watch these things, but you should really pay attention to some of the signals, the financial signals that are out there. Look at inflation. Where are prices going? Understand that that's a threat. That's a sign of things to come. And
so Brian, assuming we are already in the ditch, say we are all like broke and busted, what steps can we take to climb out of the ditch? Because we know what the breakdown looks like. We know that we need to perform a SWOT analysis, as you just went over, the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunity, and the threats. But assuming that we are already in the breakdown, in the ditch, because all of these crises situations are happening all at the same time, what steps can a person take? The individual in their household sitting at the kitchen table, what steps can they take to climb out?
The first step is survival, right?
Survival?
Yes, survival. And you're gonna ask me, what is survival? Really quick, I could tell you this, right? When your body, you think about like why we get frostbite, right? So you're out in, I don't know, you're in the middle of the Arctic tundra or something, and without a jacket, your body starts to get cold, your extremities starts to freeze. And the reason why your fingertips starts to turn blue and it's because everything's rushing to your heart to protect the main core of your body. Try to keep you alive as long as possible, okay? Even the largest corporation, you think about it, even the largest corporation actually would do something similar, right? When these companies on Wall Street run into financial trouble, right? And let's say their creditors are calling in bonds and they want to get paid, paid up. What they start to do is liquidate assets if they run into an issue, assets that are disposable, right? So the same thing can be done at your dinner table, right? Now, I just want to be clear. Some of the things that might be considered vital in New York might be different in, I don't know,
Wyoming.
Wyoming. There you go. I've never been to Wyoming, but yeah, Wyoming. You think about it. If I'm in the middle of New York, I'm sitting at my dinner table, I lost my job, what are my core functioning? The core of my household, which for the most part, I consider a household an organism, right? We have to protect that organism to keep it alive, right? The core is my rent or my mortgage, my health.
You have to have somewhere to
Those two
sleep,
things.
and you have to be healthy. Those are the survival things that survive.
Those are survival.
Okay.
If I have a car in the driveway that's you know, being financed or something, guess what's going to be sold? The car.
Get rid of
I'm in New York. I can make this work. I can make this work in New York. Okay. There's a map. Obviously, in the Midwest and certain other places, cars are essential. So that's why I give a little disclaimer in the beginning. So you just have to look at what you can remove that to either create a cash flow or create some liquidity, or B, reduce expense. So that's the steps you need to start from the moment you're in the ditch. You have to start to protect the core of your household, the organism that's called John Doe or Jane Doe's household. I need to protect where I live, my house, my mortgage, and I need to protect my health.
Have to survive. Okay. And what's the next step?
To survive. The next step
To survive.
The next step, you start to seek out income. All right. Obviously, that's the first step. After you're protecting your core, you start to pare down, any extravagance and reduce your expenses and liquidate to create cash. Next, you have to start to look at the organism has to be fed, right? And in this case, it's money. Okay, it's money. Money. In an emergency situation, right? I can't tell you to run out and go start a business because, it takes time, Angela, as you know, you're a business owner. It takes time to actually get a business up and running. So unless you have a 2-income household, one of you laid off, the other one's still employed and is secure in his or her position, maybe you can then explore whether or not, if you have a gift, don't just start a business for the sake of starting it. If you have a gift that you want to monetize, which is very important, whether you're a good salesperson, you're a good people person, you can create, you can design, you can speak, and you have we all know, let's be real, not everyone has the same gifts. I won't be one of those individuals to tell you, oh yeah, we can all do it. Everyone has a different gift. Like if I try to fix something that's electrical in my house, I'll probably kill myself. I just don't have the gift, I'm not that nimble to do wiring in my house. So I have a friend who has that gift. He's very nimble, that I'll bring in to have him do that sort of stuff. So you have to.
First thing was survival, and the second thing, what was the second thing called after you survived?
Feed the organism called your household. Feed the organism. Money is the food of that household. Okay, it has to be coming in, and you need to take certain steps to secure employment to keep that money coming in, right? I remember, like, when I look for, jobs, I send out a lot of resumes. Like, I literally, as soon as I land and I get a job, guess what? This day one, I just got this great new job. Day one, I come home and I add it to my resume. You know why? Because I know anything could happen. Layoffs, especially in Wall Street. We all know Wall Street, they'll pump out those layoffs. It's like a revolving, it's like a cycle going round and round and round. Yeah, revolving door. So day one, I beef up my resume and I keep it on my desktop in case of emergency, break glass. So I'm ready. Flood the market, work my connections. It's, again, I told you, knowing people, it was in the SWOT analysis, opportunities, people around you, work their connections. Okay, work your connections, people. I am telling you, that's one of the key things when you're in the ditch. You work your connections. There are people around you. Don't be too proud to ask someone, hey, are they hiring at your job? Can you help me with my resume?
Sign up on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is an important tool, and people don't realize how that's just an amazing gift from God. I'm telling you that we can use this in this day and time to make these sort of connections. It's an amazing tool. Okay, so work your connections, people. Work them. Always keep your resume up to date. Be prepared to strike. But you're in the ditch. Okay, you're in the ditch right now. You're calling. You're reaching out to people. You're applying. You're sending out your resume. You follow up.
Right.
Follow up, follow up, follow up. Stay in contact and follow up to pull yourself out of that ditch. Okay. And if you are married, you know, encourage your spouse to do the same, right? You know, if you go from a 2-income household down to a 1-income household, both spouses should be, it's both of you. You guys are working the same jobs. You know, I told a friend of mine that the other day, you know, his wife's a stay-home mother, you know, wife and mother, and he works transit. And I said to him, you know, you both work at transit. He looked at me like, huh, I never thought about that. I said, yeah, you think about it. It's just that she's doing one part and you are the one that's actually going into the office with your social security number registered to get a payroll, to paycheck roll, but you're both working at transit.
Wow. So even though she's home, she's still working, because without her staying home to take care of the child, he really can't do what he's doing. That's your point, right?
100% correct.
So it's so important to work as a team. It sounds like to get out of the ditch, you have to be a team in your household, whether you're married or it's your extended family members. In order to feed that household, sounds like people have to be on the same page. Is that right?
Exactly. And even if you're single, you can team up with the right people. There are people around you, opportunities. You think about it, right? There's so many stories of individuals who are both financially strapped that got together and created wealth. Right? I don't think human beings were not meant to be isolated. I don't think that's how God created us. I truly don't. We were meant to be a part of a collective. Okay.
Absolutely.
He didn't
so
want.
What else can people do to get out of the ditch?
Well, again, just to recap really quick, you know, you work your connections, you seek opportunities, you pay off bills, right? Pay off the bills that are burning a hole that's making the problem worse. Your credit cards. If you have, this might sound crazy, if you have $2,000 in the bank and you do an analysis and you think you can live off of $500 and you have a $2,000 credit card bill, take $1,500, take $1,000, pay down that debt, because you know what? It's just going to grow. And these guys don't go away unless you file for bankruptcy. And if you're an older person, in your 40s, in your 50s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and you file for bankruptcy, that's going to stay on your record a long time. You're talking about 7 years, I believe, last I checked, right? And a lot can happen in 7 years. If you're in your 20s, it's a different story, right? You file for bankruptcy in your 20s, 7 years out, you get out of the ditch. Again, it's different for younger people than it is for older people. So in our case, for the older crowd that's in a financial bind, pay down those debts, right? Because it's just going to get worse. If you owe an IRS tax bill, try your best to work out some compromise with them and try to pay down those debts. Don't make the problems worse.
So it sounds like, you know, this conversation we could definitely have a second and third iteration of this conversation, because it sounds like we're just only scratching the surface, and we do have to wrap it up. It's already 12:39.
Okay. Oh wow.
But I just, do you have any last nuggets of wisdom for the audience that you would want them to have before we wrap up this afternoon?
Yeah.
How to go from breakdown to breakthrough?
Live within your means. Look for the opportunities that are around you, people, changes in the environment, and take advantage of it. That's my best description. You're an organism, and your household is an organism. Keep it alive.
Well, thank you, Brian. We are definitely benefiting from your 20 years in the financial industry, 20 plus years. The fact that you are a principal on Wall Street definitely gives us that, again, that broader perspective. And we are lucky to have you on today. We hope to have you again in the future, because like I said, I think we only just scratched the surface. In the meantime, I would encourage our audience, you're welcome, I would encourage our audience to definitely consider the SWOT analysis. It sounds like a very practical thing to do, to consider your strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats that may be in your financial building at the moment, where the holes are, where it may start to leak or maybe already leaking. And then consider some of the practicals Brian gave to get out of the ditch. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Clarity in Crisis. Please join us in our Facebook group, Angie Speaks, Stronger Than Splinters, or you may follow me on Instagram, Angela Gibson Speaks. And thank you so much again for joining us in this episode. Here we are striving to become the next best version of ourselves. And once again, thank you, Brian Hurson. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.